But I think for all of us, we have to stand our ground if it's something that we strongly believe in. I know I certainly have done that many times throughout my career.
AdvoKAYte, holding healthcare accountable. This podcast is my way of sharing what I've learned about the mistakes, the cover-ups, and the ways we can all protect ourselves. We're all in this together. Hello and welcome to another episode of AdvoKAYte, holding healthcare accountable. I'm delighted to have Ann Roberts back in the studio with us today for 3 extended episodes, which could be 30, but we're limiting ourselves to 3. Ann, as you may know from a prior episode, is vice president of one of the most prestigious medical institutions in the world, and she is also a patient safety advocate. Ann knows how safe hospitals should be run, and she knows that it's not always that way. So here we are. We're going to get to it. Welcome, Ann.
Thanks, Kay. Excited to be back. Excited to talk about our presentation today and our topics.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I wanted to begin, Ann, by just asking you kind of a point-blank question.
Sure.
There's so many people that you and I know that work in healthcare institutions who are kind of yes men, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
They are following the party line. And even if they see things that are unsafe or practices that are hurting patients, they're afraid to speak out for fear of retribution.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you here to speak honestly about the good things and the bad things about our healthcare system? And why do you not fear retribution?
Mm-hmm. That's a really good question. You are right. There's a lot of people who are in healthcare organizations that are afraid to speak up, and for various reasons, whether that is intimidation or fear of retribution, or there is a culture where they are taught to not speak out. Where I'm not afraid to speak out. I'm very vocal. I've been a consultant for 30 years, and that's been my job, is to go in and assess different hospitals and healthcare systems to say, what have we, what opportunities for improvement do we have? What have we learned from whenever there is an error or mistake? How do we learn from that and grow? I think in any really great hospital or healthcare system, it's those that have a track record of encouraging people to come forward, encouraging people to report patient safety issues, concerns, the environment feeling toxic, anything like that. When they ask you, please come forward, please tell us, what's going on, what you're seeing. Those are the hospitals that are the most successful, have safe patient care, because they want to be able to identify, how they can improve if something goes wrong. And if you don't know about it, how are you going to fix it? And so I think that culture of reporting and bringing things to leadership's attention so that it can be addressed impacts patient care significantly, because their first priority is providing safe, quality patient care.
Well, you're absolutely right. It begins and ends with the culture. It's the culture, it's the culture, it's the culture.
Absolutely.
Hospitals that have a culture of patient safety are safer hospitals for patients, and those that don't are not as safe. I think that sounds like an overgeneralization, and you don't have to agree with me, by the way. It's a leading question, but you don't have to agree with me.
Right.
But don't you agree with me?
I absolutely agree with the fact that, again, those that want to promote patient safety are there to promote a culture of safety. Just culture is a common and well-known teaching within hospitals of, bringing in a work environment and allowing everybody to work into an environment where they feel safe speaking out, where they feel safe coming forward and talking about anything that they feel is creating a work environment that isn't safe, or and safe means several different things, not just clinical, but also emotional and wellness, and everything is also at the forefront. And so it's hard not to agree that hospitals that bring that, to the forefront are indeed the ones that are going to have safety at the top as their top priority. And those that do not, they're going to face challenges. If they're discouraging employees to come forward, and they're trying to put profit over patient safety, or for whatever reason, that's just not the way that they're driving things and not taking these concerns seriously, I think they're going to put patients at risk.
Now, I do want to mention, Anne, before we get off to the races here, because you and I can get off to the races pretty quick and get into some deep dive discussions. I do want to say that I know you're not here speaking on behalf of any particular hospital or hospital system. I also want to say, if I had to be hospitalized, and I hope that I don't have to be, but I would probably look to see where you're currently working, and I'd want to go to that hospital because I know you and I know what a patient safety advocate you are. But it also kind of begs the question. I think it's kind of funny. We're unlikely friends. And because typically we would sort of be frenemies, right?
Right.
So would you mind talking about how we met and the work that we've done together for the past decade or so?
Absolutely. And you're right. We are somewhat on the other side of the fence in our day jobs, but our passions align. We're both patient safety advocates. And at the end of the day, we want what's right for patients, regardless of the situation. And when the doctor death case here in Dallas was prevalent and all over the news, I was flabbergasted. I could not believe that this happened, that he was allowed in any way to go from one hospital to another, and it hadn't been stopped promptly, quickly. I was amazed to hear that Bob Henderson, Dr. Henderson, and others were going to the state board and being adamant and speaking out about, this physician being unsafe, and the board hadn't done anything. And so I knew that you were representing a great deal of the patients that were harmed in that case, and I knew that we just aligned in our thinking and in our passion, because I knew you were extremely passionate about it for the same reasons I was, because these patients were harmed and it could have been prevented. And so that's when, in reaching out and connecting with you, I knew that we would be able to do great things together because of the fact that we really align in that, outside of just our day jobs, outside of you being a malpractice attorney, and outside of me being on the hospital side, where we are doing everything we can to protect the hospital, to, ensure that our providers are providing safe, quality care. But we also know that there are times where that doesn't happen, but we have to be able to identify, address them, and work with the doctors to help, defend, in whatever way we can, the actions that the hospital has taken to address any issues that do arise. They arise. So you have to be prepared and understand how to address them.
What's that old saying about prevention is better than the cure, or an ounce of prevention is worth more than a pound of the cure, or something like that. Yeah. It just reminded me of that, because what I would say is the best way to protect a hospital from a malpractice lawsuit is to do the right thing up front.
Absolutely.
And there are right ways to do things that minimize the risk of injury to patients.
Right.
But we also know that there's a lot of hospitals that have other pressures on them, business pressures, financial pressures, pressure to turn a profit, etc. So we're going to get into that. We're going to do a deep dive in that. But one thing I would say we learned from the Dr. Death case is that it didn't end there.
Right.
I love opening my email inbox to get an email from you where you're like, you're not going to believe this one. Like, a news story of another Dr. Death in another state or whatever. Like, did we not learn anything?
Right. And it is frustrating because we've done so much work, as have others, to bring to light a lot of these system failures and, ways that we can prevent, this from happening again. And I think one thing is we've said several times is the Dr. Death case had a lot of media attention, but he's not the first. He won't be the last where these types of things happen and they slip through the cracks. Healthcare is a business. There are hospitals, there's safeguards in place. But again, there's other reasons why those systems that are built for patient safety or designed to promote patient safety can fail for many, many reasons. And some of it is business and some healthcare systems. Others are just very complex. And it's like any other business. There's things that are not going to be perfect and things happen. In this business, you know, small mistakes can have major impacts for patients. And so you are absolutely right. And I agree with you. The best way to prevent it is to get ahead of it and do things right the first time and have a system designed to identify, best practice, safety protocols so that you can ensure that you have a safe quality care for the patients. And that includes every aspect of the business. So,
Well, that's right. And, I think, if you think of entering a hospital, most people enter the hospital. Well, first of all, hospitals these days, you look around town, at least in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and some of the most gorgeous modern buildings are hospitals. And you walk into a gorgeous lobby, and there might be a Starbucks there or whatever, and you think, man, this has got to be a great hospital. As opposed to, there's another one in Dallas that is a good hospital, but it's very dated. They need to redecorate. They need to freshen up their lobby, and they don't have a Starbucks. But most patients and their families entering a hospital, that they see that, and then they see the surgery waiting room. They see the hospital rooms. But there's a whole nother side to hospitals. Yeah. Hospitals are complex business operations, but patients don't see all of the business operations. So I think it's important to kind of walk through and educate and acquaint our listeners with basic business operations, basic governance of hospitals. All right, are you up for that?
I'm ready. Let's go.
Okay, well, dive in and educate us then. Just start by walking us through kind of who has the ultimate responsibility for patient safety at a hospital? Because, lots of decisions that are made, whether they're made in the business office or by the clinical staff, they do have patient safety implications. So just walk us through it.
Sure. So I always say that patient safety, the responsibility lies with everybody within the organization, because that should be at the forefront of everybody's mind. It is a healthcare organization, a healthcare entity, hospital. But every hospital has a governing body. And that governing body is required by law and regulation to oversee every aspect of the business, whether that is, financial implications, whether that is reputational, within the community, have a great facility that looks gorgeous and having state-of-the-art equipment, or whether that is also, of course, they have the responsibility and duty to patients to ensure that their providers, their clinicians are indeed providing safe, quality patient care. So patient safety is ultimately the responsibility of the board because, as I mentioned, it's a business. Every aspect of that business impacts patient safety. So you have clinical leadership, you have administrative leadership, but everything rolls up to the board, who is ultimately responsible. So.
And who comprises the board? Are these clinical people or business people or people from the community?
It's a combination. It's a combination. Every hospital board is developed differently, but they are looking at individuals, hopefully, who have, experience sitting on, the board of a big company because they know how every aspect of a business works. They look at legal, having attorneys. They want clinicians clearly available because they are decision makers on the clinical side. And so if we focus and pivot a little bit to the medical staff leadership and the collaboration on the business side, you do, of course, have business administrative leaders such as myself. I oversee medical affairs, and as a consultant, I've done that throughout my life. And that is focusing on partnering with the physician leaders and the administrators in all aspects, whether that's legal, risk management, compliance, to make sure that they're well connected and they're partnering on how they're developing policies and procedures that impact patients and clinical patient safety and so forth. So they work together on hospital policies. They work together on clinical protocols because of course, the clinicians are the experts on clinical care, but then you have administrators such as myself who are going to advise them in regards to, okay, well, here are the regulatory implications that you need to take into consideration. This is what our own policies, procedures, and bylaws that are related to the one that you're developing that you have to take into consideration to make sure that they are aligned. Legal, of course, is there to advise them on any state or federal, regulations that may impact what they're talking about. And then, of course, the physician leaders are there to look at what is best practice within the nation around the world. What are the clinical practice protocols that other organizations use? And that's based on evidence based protocols that really identify what has been identified as best practice within that area. So it's a partnership. You have the business aspect where they are running a business and they have to make sure that fiscally they're doing so responsibly. They on the finance side, the administration side, they have to make sure that they have the appropriate staff, resources, equipment to support the clinical care that's being provided, the types of patients that are coming to their organization. So the physicians may be highly qualified and competent, but they have to have the right, business aspect as well, financially have the right equipment and staff so that they can perform the patient care safely. So it is a partnership between administrators and the clinicians.
Now, one of the things that's kind of cool about our friendship and our collegiality, shall I say, is that we don't always agree.
Right.
So I'm going to challenge that a little bit because I think at the institution that you work at, that's probably the case. There probably is a true partnership. But of course, I see all the train wrecks, so to speak. Yeah. And I also talk to a lot of doctors. My joke has been like, I need to start telling doctors I'm not a licensed therapist because there's so many doctors that are so frustrated and burned out and disgruntled with hospital leadership. And they do not feel that it's a partnership. They feel that it is an us versus them. And that in the hospitals that I see, the business office, is pushing for, we've got to, the home office, out of state is pressing for more profits. We've got to figure out a way. And the clinicians are saying that's going to hurt patients and that ultimately it's the business people that win. So I don't know if you know of these things outside of your institution or if it's just me.
Well, I wouldn't work there, but
Right.
I have been doing this for a very long time. I've been a consultant for over 25 years. So I've been in small rural hospitals to large prestigious academic medical centers, research centers. And absolutely that occurs. And I think those are the organizations that are putting patients at risk. I think if you do not have that strong partnership, and you're not listening to the physicians who are there to provide safe, quality patient care. I mean, that is the oath that they took. They went to, medical school. They spent their life training in order to help patients. Yes, you have, the good and the bad, out there like any industry, but the great majority of clinicians are there to help patients and to advocate for what they need to provide safe, quality patient care. So if you're in a facility where that partnership is not there and they are not working together to look at every aspect of the business with patient safety at the forefront, then you are going to have those challenges. And, one of the things that I do as a consultant, as I like to see myself in the middle ground to say, how do I bring everyone together so that, I'm very familiar with the business aspect, but my focus is always on patient safety. So I also work on educating physician leaders on how they need to make their voices heard, how they are the drivers in regards to patient safety, and that if they feel something's unsafe, they are the ones with the authority to say, time out, this is not okay. And there are laws and governing structures with medical bylaws and so forth that do empower them. There's the American societies that mandate that hospitals follow ethical guidelines. And so I tend to be the ones working with the physicians to remind them that everyone else here are, we're partners. We are providing you consultative advice on how to address things, but ultimately it is your name. Like, you are responsible. You are ethically responsible for even reporting other doctors if you find something unsafe. But it is, hard sometimes for the physicians to be able to push back if they're not listened to, if there's business decisions, corporate or whoever's coming down saying, no, we have to focus on A, B, and C. It can put the physicians in a position where maybe they feel hopeless. But I think for all of us, we have to stand our ground if that's something that we strongly believe in. I know I certainly have done that many times throughout my career. If I'm in an organization, especially as a consultant, and walk in and say, well, this isn't safe, here's my advice, you can take it and improve and do better, to make sure that you're providing safe patient care, and then I educate their physicians and do the best I can to make sure that's heard. And some of them take that advice and, others may not. But
Yeah.
I always like to hope for the best.
Well, it's like the structure's there and the roadmap is laid out about what the right thing to do is. Healthcare and hospitals are among the most highly regulated industries in the world. And yet,
And yet.
then there's page 2. And I could, the mark of an older person is they always want to devolve into an old war story, so that's me, because whenever we talk about these things in my head, I'm like, oh, I could tell so many stories, and I will tell a very short story. I was in a neurosurgeon's office. This neurosurgeon had taken care of a client of mine, had become the subsequent treater. And so his deposition was going to be taken, and somebody appears at his door. He's, I'm so sorry, just 1 minute. He gets up, and then he comes back in a few minutes, and he just put his head in his hands like that, and he said, I really think I'm done. I was like, what do you mean? You're like 45 or 48 years old. You spent like 12 years in training. What do you mean? And he was a really good surgeon. And he's like, I just can't take it anymore. And I was like, well, what do you mean? And he said, that was somebody from the hospital administration came down so excited because they found a cheaper screw that I could use for spinal fixation in my spine surgeries, and had plotted out this algorithm about how the hospital could save all of this money by doing that. And he's like, I've just had it, or whatever.
Yeah.
But, and then, I also can tell you so many stories of doctors who have tried to stand up and do the right thing and say, my moral and ethical obligation is to tell you that you have a very dangerous doctor on your staff. And this doctor here is a clear and present danger to your patients. And then that doctor ends up being the one run out and retaliated against. So again, not a hospital where you would work, but these are the bad ones.
Yeah.
And no surprise that there's a correlation between the hospitals with bad safety cultures and the fact that I know about them and others, because they're getting bad outcomes for their patients. But guess who wouldn't know? The patient wouldn't know.
Absolutely.
Because the patient is human, and the patient would say, my goodness, that's a beautiful, brand new hospital with shiny tile floors and a Starbucks in the lobby. So it's got to be a great hospital.
Yeah, it really is unfortunate. And, the situation you just mentioned where, a physician is at burnout because administration says, hey, we found a way to save all this money, is an example of where, because I am a patient safety advocate and I work with the physicians. They are who I work with on a day-to-day basis. And, in a situation like that is where I would want to empower the physician to say, we need to take a time out. We need to get other clinicians' input and everything on this, because we're the ones that make a decision regarding whether or not which equipment is best and safe for patients. It's not about, I understand, this is a business. We need to be able to be fiscally responsible. Let's look at the entire thing, and maybe this will work. Let's, do the pros and the cons. Many hospitals have committees that specifically serve that purpose. You have physicians there, you have finance there, you have administrators, sometimes legal, and you tear every single thing of those apart to really identify, okay, how can we make sure, of course, my priority is always safe, quality patient care while evaluating, the equipment. Is it, yes, it's cheaper, but is it safe or just as safe? Are there risks, benefits? What are the, cons, pros and cons? And so, again, I always focus on that partnership. And if you don't have that strong partnership and you're not letting the physicians make the decisions on what's safe for patients, that's where I feel the breakdown is on the business side. So, and I could see why a physician would get burnout if they feel powerless to be able to make decisions that is upheld by the hospital if they feel it's the best thing for patients.
Thank you so much for listening in. And Ann and I had so much to talk about that we decided to continue our conversation. So please come back next week for a continuation of my conversation with Ann Roberts.